Whether on the go or at the table, get lost in a conversation about everything coffee with your host, Eric Ortiz.
Hey, and welcome to Everything Coffee, a podcast that brings in different people weekly from all walks of life to talk about everything coffee, of course. Today I'm joined by Jess Green. She's a studio potter and art educator that focuses on functional pottery. Her amazing work blends illustrated artwork and functional objects used in everyday routines, like coffee and tea, of course. Her art, the functional work she makes, is centered around the importance of family conversation, storytelling, and the building of community. Amazing. You can catch Jess Green's website and her gorgeous art at jessgreenceramics.com and on Instagram at Jess Green Ceramics. Please welcome Miss Jess Green. Jess, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I am good. I am so thrilled to have you on the show because it's a departure from what I normally bring in terms of guests, but I feel, as we talked a little bit on the pre-show of this, that ceramics is so important in the world of just coffee, tea, anything, and especially the form that you take on, which is incredibly elevated pottery and ceramics. I'm just awed by the art that you produce. I'm just the gorgeous birds that you draw. I'm just like, wow, they're beautiful. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself, Jess, because obviously you're not in the coffee world, but you kind of cater a lot to some of the coffee world. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am an art educator at a high school. I teach in one community and I do my ceramics in another. I work out of Indiana County, Pennsylvania. I have loved ceramics and art since I was little, and it just kind of naturally became my future. I hope to continue building my ceramics business, and I really love how something that started off really truly as conversations with the people that encouraged me to become an artist, conversations that we had around the table with coffee, which is funny that this is kind of coming back to it, but has really, my business has grown because of opportunities that have come from pop-ups at coffee locations and other local businesses. And it's really just, it feels very fluid and really exciting. And my work mostly is coffee mugs. So I do other things, but my most popular items are definitely my mugs.
Now, for a normal coffee drinker, Jess, I'm a normal coffee drinker. I elevate my coffee. I own a lot of machinery that makes, coffee that most people can make in a very cheap machine. I love what I'm doing, and it seems that it comes off as the same with you. You're loving what you're doing in terms of the ceramics, the pottery, the artwork. How much of a connection do people have to something that really is handmade, one of a kind, that really that you're catering to in terms of your population, your audience that you target?
Well, I think everybody has their favorite coffee mug. And once you're introduced to handmade mugs, it becomes even more special. The conversations become more special. You're sitting around the table talking about this piece of artwork in your hand. You talk about, the form and the function and how, it keeps your hands warm while you're having your conversation inside or outside. You share mugs whenever someone comes over. We love to open up our cupboards and talk about, well, there's my Dawn mug, there's my Christy, there's my Nikki, there's my Jess, and we call our mugs by the first names of the potters, at least in the potter community that I belong to.
I like that.
So it's connections for me, to people that I've learned from, a lot of my collection started by collecting pieces from my mentors and my professors. And then I kind of branched out to people that I learned from online. And then I have purchased mugs that people I necessarily haven't learned from directly. But then when I get the piece, I can look at it and I can kind of learn from it in my hand. So I always purchase something with, at least I'm kind of dorky, I guess, in that way. I purchase with a purpose.
I can tell you, yeah, I can tell you that I am one of those people that have mugs, and sadly I don't own a great deal of just handmade pottery myself or ceramics. I have a few pieces here that have been given to my wife and from a friend that's thrown herself, and they're absolutely gorgeous. I do believe, but yours are elevated, and I'm kind of curious. You touched on it a little bit in terms of what inspires you, but what takes you there in terms of that artwork and that throw when you're making that pottery, because it is a unique design. It is a unique kind of artwork that really I have not personally seen anywhere. But what kind of inspires you to that?
The inspiration, I guess, and the connections have always come from things that I've loved, connections that I have. I love to draw. I love to paint. My earliest memories have always been of painting and drawing and creating by myself or with people. And I feel like my mug designs come from special memories or connections to people. And it's like I had mentioned in my bio, like Easter eggs, because I know where the imagery comes from. I know what the idea behind it is, but unless you're very close to me or your family, you may not know. And it's funny because my family will catch me on some of the things and they'll message me. And like my cousin had previously messaged me and said, I have a feeling that those chickadees are pap. And I was like, you're right. So my pap is the reason why I do what I do. He has, and my dad and my pap encouraged me from the beginning. And no matter how many people told me art and art education wasn't going to get me anywhere, ceramics wasn't going to get me anywhere, they always stood very firm in follow your passions and do what you love. And we will encourage you in every way to get where you want to go. So they really encouraged me, and unfortunately I lost both of them to cancer.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
So yeah, that was very hard. And so it was very tough to lose my closest critics and very, very, dear people to me. But when I go to my grandparents, because my kiln is actually out at their place, when I go to my grandparents and fire my kiln, the chickadees come see me, which is kind of crazy, but they do. And I'll be in the garage firing my kiln, and I'll just see one fly in. So that's why I keep putting chickadees on my cup.
Yeah, and I'm curious, Jess, with your artwork itself, how unique in terms of it? Like, do you make a mass production of one cup and then you cease, or is this something that you're constantly changing up, or is that one of a kind of deal?
They are all one of a kind.
Oh, wow.
I'm kind of crazy like that. People have told me before to, why don't you make decals of your creature? Why don't you make decals? Because to me, it's not as special. I want them all to be a piece of art that is useful, that could become something like an heirloom, that you would pass down from generation to generation, and like my pap, share stories with me over this piece of art in your hand, and maybe pass it down to somebody else and talk about that piece of artwork. And it could mean something completely different to somebody else, whereas for me, my best friend is represented on that cup through the chickadees that he used to feed in his garage. But to you, a chickadee might mean somebody else, you know?
Yeah.
And so you get to build your own connections, and my connection doesn't really matter after you purchase it. So that's kind of why I never really say, well, this is my Pappy mug.
Yeah, no,
my,
they're your Easter eggs, as you said. They're just so special. Right. I am even more awed by that now, because now that you said that each one of these is unique, I have kept my eye on one particularly that I was just kind of like, oh man, that I have a connection to that for some reason. It feels good. It's the owl. And I'm looking at that and I'm just like, that is absolutely gorgeous. And I cannot believe that you make one of a kind items and then just sell that. Who is, or at least where do you make the most of your sales, Jess? Is it online, or is it at your community? It's some kind of farmer's market at stores?
Well, I do pop-ups. I started doing pop-ups at the local Commonplace Coffee, and then I do them at farmers markets around here. We also do a big once-a-year sale for the Indiana County Potter Store. That's probably the biggest sale that I make all year, at least right now. And throughout the year, I once I make them, they literally are flying out the door. They don't stick around very long, which is great. And because I guess because I'm a mom and an art teacher as well, sure. And a wife, I don't have as much time to, continue making them. So I would love to free up more time and make more. But I make them and get them out as quickly as I can. And I am going to start putting them online, actually. But I was kind of slowly working my way towards that. And I think I'm finally ready to get them flying out a little bit faster. So,
well, I know, I know a lot of the listeners that after they see the website, after they see your Instagram, they're going to be kind of like, wow. It really is different, because I've seen a lot of pottery, a lot of ceramics that is not nearly as crisp as what I'm seeing. Like legitimately, I'm looking at that owl. I'm looking at some of these chickadees. And I'm just kind of floored, because I'll be honest, Jess, my background in ceramics is HBO's The Great Pottery Throwdown.
Oh yeah,
which I absolutely love. Me and my wife, whenever we see the new season come out, we're just like, yes, cannot wait, because we just see so much connection to people with their art form. Even the host, I love the gentleman that hosts it, how emotional he gets connected to these pieces, and how much he sees the artists connecting to their artwork. And it's really pretty, because it takes me back to what coffee can be. It's a very romantic, a very, very, very pastime kind of presence. And when you add that to a piece of ceramic that is, as you say, like an heirloom, something that's so special, one of a kind, I think it makes that coffee taste even better. It just elevates it to this like unknown degree, because it's just even more special, especially if you're experiencing that with someone else. You're having a great conversation, as you say. What makes a perfect cup for you in terms of when you're making an art? What is that thing you're thriving for when you're actually throwing and you're hoping to make that perfect cup?
I think I'm always working towards that. But I love when it fits my hand, when it feels comfortable in my hand, when the handle feels just right. And I have to say, none of my mugs are identical either, because when I sit there throwing, I always think like, what if I did this? What if I did this? So they're truly unique. I haven't settled on one form, and I don't know if I ever will. Just because of the nature of me. But I do feel like everybody's hand is different and everybody's grip is different. And I love when people come to the pop-ups and I see them holding the mugs and then they smile when they feel the right one. And the weight of it feels perfect. The handle feels perfect for their hand. And you can just tell they connected with it and with the imagery. There's just like a special little moment that happens when you found your cup. And I think that helps, the special moment with your coffee in the morning because it just feels right. And then you get just your type of coffee and it tastes right. So,
absolutely.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Would you say that a lot of people in that world, whether it be tea, coffee, anything else, Jess, they're just maybe, a cup's a cup to them, but what do you see when you see someone actually holding them? Like you said right now, it's like when they actually pick one up and they realize like, oh my gosh, this is something different. Is that like an epiphany moment for them? And then all of a sudden it's like nonstop, like I can't go back to the old stuff anymore?
Oh, yes. I've had people tell me that I used to throw exclusively porcelain and all of my stuff is pretty thin. I do make them sometimes a little bit thicker, but they're pretty thin and they're like, oh, the weight of this feels so great. And so they talk about the weight and then they talk about, how it feels in their hand, how it curves in their hand. And I think that's a big part of it. I feel like even my friends that own the coffee shop in town, talking to them about how they roast their own coffees for their coffee beans, for like the commonplace coffee. They roast their own beans and they talk about the flavor profiles and they talk about with such passion about the different aspects of it. And it's so funny because we're both speaking the same language, but we're talking about different items, but we're talking about two items that kind of become a marriage of one thing. So it's really interesting.
It's the same love language when you're actually kind of mentioning things that you're so passionate about. And even though there's different terminologies and different technique, I mean, you understand it when you hear someone that is as passionate about what they're doing. It translates to you of like, I get you. I feel your energy.
Yeah.
I see what you're trying to say because I do the same thing. And you're doing that and completely. Jess, I got to ask you, what you've mentioned a few of your cups, like your Chickadee. What's your favorite cup? Because I have a favorite cup. And I'll let you know, mine is actually, unfortunately, it's not unique in sense of what it is, but the background of it, until I feel a good one that fits in my hand, I'll say, is a one that my wife actually found at a Goodwill. It's from David Letterman. I was a big, huge Letterman fan back in the day, and of course I missed the guy not being on the air. But it was it was a late show mug that she found at Goodwill just out of the blue, and I try to drink from it as much as possible. It feels different than all the other mugs that I have, and just because it's same material, but it just feels different because it feels good in my hand. But I'm curious, what's your favorite mug?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
It changes.
It does change. It changes a lot. I have, mugs that are my favorite because they feel a certain way. I have certain mugs that I'll get in the morning. Like I have one that my friend Christy Culp made. And I will pull that one out. It's beautifully illustrated on the outside. She does more, berries and flowers, things like that from her garden on her illustrations. And I love the way the texture of that cup feels. And I feel like that cup to me, I could put cold things in. For some reason, I always grab it for cold drinks. And then I have a different cup that I grab for like warm drinks. I have a cup that I kept, which was one of mine that I had put an eagle on, and I just couldn't let it go because I really loved it. And that's one of my favorite cups. But I also have this super old mug that was my grandfather's, my pap's. That he used to keep in the garage. And it's like this yellow color, and the yellow is wearing off, and it's like this white porcelain underneath, but it's so old. It probably contains all kinds of crazy lead, but
I was going to say it's just arsenic, some uranium. It glows at night.
Lord knows what I'm doing to myself when I drink out of it.
I like that. Yeah. I like that. Do you think, and I don't know if this works for you too, but do you think people are mood drinkers in terms of this is a cup I need to have when I'm sad, or this is a cup when I'm happy?
Oh my gosh, yes. I have a cup that I have that, oh my goodness, I can't think of her name. The one artist, she makes these moody, hysterical little girls on her mugs, and when I am in a mood, I go for that one. Like, and I like one by one all of the commercial made pottery in my house, or even glass cups, have gone out the door, and I've replaced them with handmade stuff. And I have so many people that purchase from me that keep saying, I threw away something else from Walmart because I bought another one of your mugs. And I'm like, good job, keep going.
I feel like if I grab one of your mugs, Jess, I am going to kind of go into this rabbit hole, because
do it.
I have a lot of these mugs where I'm, they're either collectible in terms of they're like Anchor or anything else, but there's also a lot of mugs where I'm just like, I could care less. And if something else was nice and fancy sitting in that spot, I mean, I'm not going to feel bad for throwing away the Target mug or the Walmart mug. So I kind of feel the same way, where I'm going to go down this rabbit hole, and all of a sudden I'm going to be like 80% of your sales for some time. Yeah. I feel that's how it will go. But I'm curious, Jess, how hard is this to do? Because like I said, my experience, I've never done this. I'm willing to learn. I would love to try it just so I can understand what goes into it, because I could never do this professionally. I can never do this even for fun. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't translate, but I love seeing other people do it, especially on TV, but it doesn't look easy. It does not look easy.
It's
and not only that, but I'm seeing how your artwork is done on the mug itself. How do you how does that all work together? Except for your massive amount of experience, I can imagine that there's still days where you're just kind of like, I give up for today.
Yeah.
But
I do.
But what goes into all of this for you?
So it cracks me up whenever people ask me if I can get a mug by next week for a wedding. And I'm like, good luck. Because it does take time. It takes a lot of time. And I feel like everybody needs to, if they truly want to start appreciating handmade mugs, they need to take a class, and they need to understand what goes into it. Because there's, the making of the piece itself, which takes time, and then you have to dry it without it cracking. Then you have to, at leather hard, attach the handle, and then you have to, bisque it. And then after it's bisqued, I paint my imagery on it with a tiny paintbrush and some underglaze. And it takes hours to paint each one of those animals on there. I used to spend like 6+ hours on some of the more intricate paintings.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't quite spend as much time on them unless it's summertime and I have more time.
I can imagine.
Right. But I have gotten it to the point where I've been doing them so long, I can cut back on my time. But it's still a multi-hour thing to do, one of these paintings on the mugs, because I'm kind of picky.
Sure.
So I go into that, I want to make myself proud. And I want to be able to, create something that I feel like is a piece of art. A piece of usable art, but you have to put that on there, and then you've got to put your glaze on there. You have to glaze fire it. And the firings themselves take, depending on your kiln, it could take a day or a couple days to do. And so there's so much more work involved in creating just one piece,
and
then people don't understand.
And just so I can kind of just even throw this out, Jess, but after watching that show, there's no guarantee even after the firing that things come out, correct?
Yes. Yes, yeah. In fact, the one that I was telling you that I saved and I wouldn't give away, I didn't include the fact that there was a crack on the back of it. So I would never have sold it anyway. But yes, you could make this gorgeous piece and it looks absolutely perfect, even after the first firing. And you glaze it and you stick it in the kiln and it comes out and something happened. Either it cracked or the kiln shelf fell and you lost half of your work, or the kiln misfired and now you have bubbles all through your glaze. Things can go wrong.
I can imagine.
Or you pull it out of the kiln and drop it right on the floor.
Oh, no. I'm sure that's happened a few times.
Yeah.
Jess, how much fun is this for you? Because it is time consuming. I would think that this is something that it's kind of taken on a role, because you're not only are you an art teacher, but you're also teaching this in the community. You're working out on this. Is this something that you kind of fall back into because this is your zen, or is there more to this for you when it starts becoming personal and you're doing it for yourself rather than for someone else or for the business?
So, it's kind of all of that for me, because when I'm having a stressful day, all I want to do is go down to the studio and unwind and make mugs and make bowls or whatever. Or I want to go paint something on the cup, or, some days I'm not in the mood to do any of that anyway. But really, truly, my therapy, I guess, if you want to call it that, is to go to my studio, because I do love it. I would love to just be able to do that, just 100% be a potter. But I love teaching as well. I absolutely have a passion for teaching, and my perfect setup would be a teaching studio where I could do it both, together, all the time. And yeah, it really truly is. It's a passion. And I do have stressful days where I try to make something and nothing works out and I get really frustrated. But I've learned over the years of doing this that if I start to feel a certain way, just walk away, because nothing good can come of it. If I force myself to do it, nothing good is coming of it. So it is okay to walk away.
That's not just in pottery, but that's just a solid life lesson in terms of just, you got to walk away once in a while until you can keep being passionate about it, because you just have a bad moment with it. You start connecting those two things and you're not going to want to do it anymore. I can imagine how that connects with you, because one of the things that Jess, that you did, and we talked about this online. I asked Jess, can you please send me a bio and so forth? And she said, yeah, let me send you a bio. And then she said, it's going to be long. Okay. And I'm like, don't worry about it. I got this. And so she sent me the bio, and it is obviously, you're not only are you a great artist, a fantastic potter, but you're also a prolific writer, I will say.
Oh, thanks.
and one of the things that I really wanted to kind of touch on, because there's so much here that I've read, but I really like to know what the inspiration, the one person, and I know that it's hard to kind of focus on just one person, Jess, but who was that one person that really drove it for you, that really kind of said to you, this is it, this is what I like doing?
That's hard.
I can imagine.
I know, right? I would have to throw it back to my first pottery professor, Don Hedman, because even though, while I was in the studio with Don, other people were encouraging that passion, he was the first one to look at me and say, Jess, you could really make something out of this. And I still sell with him on the Indiana County Potters Tour. I'm one of the guest artists at his studio, which is absolute heaven for me. I love that place. If I won the lottery, I would own that place. But he's still a mentor to this day, along with all the potters that I also work with on that tour. But he's one of I look for his comments, and I really like when he says to me, wow, that's really great. It means so much. And I think it's because he is like the first pottery professor that I had that really he was passionate, and he encouraged me. He also showed me that it was okay when things failed, and it was okay that if I made something that was pretty good but not great, go ahead and smash it, try it again, walk away, come back after dinner, call your grandpap, because he knew my pap would come and pick me up for dinner sometimes. Mm-hmm. And he would say, call your pap, go get dinner, come back. Or, something like that. But just the conversations that we had then and the conversations that we have now about pottery and how pottery has a mind of its own. Sometimes the clay wants to be something, sometimes it doesn't. All the things he said to me, they really stuck. And I don't know, like he really fed that passion that I had. And all through my 2 bachelor's degrees, I kept going back to the ceramic studio because it felt like home and it felt like the place I wanted to be. And even if I had a terrible day on the wheel, it was still better than anywhere else. Like while my dad was fighting cancer, my place to go to zone out, to kind of forget the fact that my dad was being life-flighted or going through life-saving or risking surgery. All I wanted to do was go to the studio and be there. And even when my pap was fighting cancer, and he was, I'm sorry, my phone is just blowing up. I'm sorry. But when my pap was losing his battle to cancer, before he lost the ability to talk to me, I had told him I was going to go to NCCA, which is a clay conference, and it was in Pittsburgh, which was close to where we live. And I knew he was losing his battle, and I didn't want to leave his side, but he also told me, he said, I want you to be there because I know you're supposed to be there. And I sat in the hallway, unfortunately, bawling my eyes out because he lost his battle. Yeah. But I knew that I was in the right place and I was surrounded by the right people and I was where I needed to be. So it kind of all comes in circles. And it all is very therapeutic, even though it can be tough and it can just, you can have horrible days in the studio. It doesn't matter. It's always been that therapy and that passion that's a drive, that I just want to be there and I feel like I'm at home when I'm there. But yeah.
Beautifully said, Jess. And because this show's about coffee, Jess, I got to ask, because it comes around, like you said, you made a lot of these cups and a lot of other items for people, but what is one memory that you want to share that you had holding a mug with some coffee, enjoying a conversation or the presence of others? What is that one memory that you always kind of go back to and think, yeah, that was special?
Okay. Can I give you 2?
Sure. Yeah. Give me 2.
Okay. One is, wasn't necessarily me holding the coffee, but me with a piece of toast and my grandpa with coffee, and I would dip my toast into his coffee and we would draw on the funnies or the comics in the Sunday paper together. And that was one core memory that will always be burned in my brain. And then 2, the Potter Store. That had been something since the Potter Store started. My pap took me on it sometimes, but like I would go by myself too, or with my husband or, somebody else. And I always said, I'll be on this tour. I will be on this tour, you know? And when I finally got on the tour and I sat down in Nancy Smeltzer's kitchen, surrounded by amazing potters that I consider mentors and friends, we all exchanged mugs and pulled mugs from her wall from famous potters from all over the United States. We talk about the mugs that she has there. You know, we ooh and ah over everybody's pieces. We exchange, you know, we do trades of our work between each other. But we sit there with coffee either in the mornings or after one of the shows wrap up, or we make wood fire pizza and drink coffee out of each other's mugs. And that's another memory. Like every single year, I get to experience this with people I value, what they say, what they do, who they are, and we support one another. It's just this, I found my people in the mud and the coffee, really.
I love that.
And yeah, so
I absolutely love that. Yeah, it sounds like you made it, Miss Jess, and it keeps on getting better. Looks like you were surrounded by a lot of great people that inspired you, and I'm truly happy to have gotten to talk to you, because it has been fascinating in terms of the art, the work you do. I am just awed by that. Miss Jess, where can people find your artwork?
They can find it either on Instagram at Jess Green Ceramics or jessgreenceramics.com.
Love it, love it, love it. You will not regret this. If you go to Jess Green Ceramics on Instagram, look at the artwork. And then when Jess finally has that online, support, buy that artwork. You're not going to regret it, because I tell you that I have not seen anything like that. I believe your professor when he said that you can make something out of this. I really do believe that when I see this artwork. So Ms. Jess, thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And don't forget to subscribe to Everything Coffee on Apple and Spotify or anywhere else you get your podcasts. And follow us on Instagram at Everything Coffee, everything.coffee.podcast, I should say. And check out our website at everythingcoffee.podbean.com. Thank you for supporting and listening and doing your part in supporting local businesses in your city and around the world.